General Motors announced Wednesday it is negotiating the sale of its shuttered Lordstown, Ohio factory to a company that builds electric trucks. The company also said it plans to invest $700 million in 3 other Ohio factories, creating 450 additional jobs. A company called Workhorse Group announced Wednesday it is in talks to acquire the shuttered factory. The move would bring new production and assembly jobs to the plant, sparking hope in a town that was on the verge of economic collapse. The Lordstown factory closed its doors 5 months ago after more than 50 years of production. It led to the loss of nearly 8,000 jobs. A new report in the New York Times Magazine shows how the closure has devastated the regional economy. New York Times Magazine contributor Dan Kaufman wrote that article, and he joins us now. Dan, thank you so much for being with us. First off, tell us, how did towns like Lordstown, and so many of them across the country, become so reliant on one company, in this case GM, to sort of, provide everyone in the region with jobs?
Well, Lordstown is situated in the Mahoning Valley, which is a really interesting, heavily industrialized part of Northeast Ohio. And actually, there was a really strong steel industry until the mid-'80s. That vanished. That caused the loss of more than 50,000 jobs, good-paying jobs. This was unionized steel workers, largely. So General Motors was like the buffer, really, that absorbed some of these losses. But the area has been on a fairly steep decline since then.
Right.
And it was kind of the last bastion of these good jobs.
So fascinating. Reading your excellent piece, I was sort of struck by, not only was it sort of the end of this town as a manufacturing hub, but it also felt like a death knell for organized labor. Can you tell us a little bit about how these manufacturing unions have, lost some of their bargaining power?
Well, it's been a kind of a war of attrition, really. NAFTA certainly contributed to a loss of leverage. General Motors last year became the largest vehicle manufacturer in Mexico. A lot of these jobs have gone there, and they've eroded the bargaining power. Since 2005, General Motors was in 16 states, its assembly plants. In 2005, now it's in 7.
Right.
So a lot of these jobs have been lost. And these are good jobs because they are union jobs. They provide a pension for the older workers, not for the new hires, and they pay a reasonable wage, a good wage, like $30 an hour. And these have been lost. And I think one thing that's lost in the discussion when people talk about a low unemployment figure is what kind of jobs these are. And these are good jobs, and they're such good jobs that people are willing and desperate enough to travel to other plants, sometimes separating from their families in order to do so.
And one thing I think people lose track of is the fact that these are good jobs because unions fought for them for a really long time. These weren't things that were given to the workers without a struggle. And so I'm just curious, number one, what's going to happen to these unionized workers? You said there was a lawsuit against GM. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. In February, the UAW filed a lawsuit because GM said these plants would be unallocated, which means they will no longer have a product to build. The UAW argues in its lawsuit that this term is really a euphemism for closing or idling the plants.
Which they can't do because they had a contract.
Exactly. And that language is specifically addressed in the contract. So the UAW and the lawsuit, they said, despite this announcement that the company may sell the factory to this group called Workhorse, that the lawsuit is continuing. And it's unclear what this new Workhorse would bring to the plant. It's certainly a minuscule company compared to General Motors. And the
would
UAW,
it restore union jobs?
Doubtfully.
Right.
Only the American manufacturers have contracts with the UAW, and this is why these jobs are so crucial, not just for the workers themselves, but they lift up the wages of the entire region. If union members have more money to spend, they spend it on local businesses and so on.
I mean, I think on the one hand, it's sort of easy to understand the economic forces that would, challenge a company like GM. But on the other hand, when you look at the way corporate wages have risen so steadily in the top echelons of so many companies, you wonder why the bottom levels of these companies are being squeezed.
Exactly. And this is also a company that was bailed out by U.S. taxpayers a decade ago to the tune of $50 billion. And they're making now near record-breaking profits. They've also just, in 2018, they rebooted their car, the Blazer, and that's being produced in Mexico, where workers make an average of $2.30 an hour. So in the context, it's a very politically toxic announcement, especially because this is an area that switched from Democratic largely to supporting President Trump. And he made promises to these people in 2017. He went to Youngstown, which is just a few miles from Lordstown, and said, don't sell your homes. All these factories are coming back. And
what is the latest from the White House to the residents of Lordstown? Has there been any messaging?
He's tweeted this. He personally attacked by Twitter the head of the UAW local there, Dave Green. But today he tweeted an excited announcement about this workhorse deal, but without any specifics. And the UAW, again, is continuing with its lawsuit.
Right.
So.
It's such an interesting sort of uneasy bedfellows when you have, a Republican like Donald Trump in the White House. Republicans haven't traditionally been cozy with unions, yet at the same time, like you said, these workers make up a big part of the president's base at this point.
That's true. And in some ways, the Rust Belt is the one genuine swing area.
Right.
Some of these workers went for Ronald Reagan in their earlier iterations, and he's been able to divide some of the labor movement and peel off a significant chunk. Now, I think that's contingent on him delivering, because a lot of these people voted for Obama in 2008 and 2012, and there's a desperation. People think low unemployment means there isn't economic insecurity, but again, the jobs that they're working are not the kinds of jobs that are being lost. Sometimes they're working 2 or 3 jobs just to make it.
Because they aren't jobs that are supporting families with pensions.
Exactly.
I thought it was interesting, one of the workers that you interviewed sort of traced back the demise of organized labor to the moment when Ronald Reagan fired the air controllers.
Yes, that interview was conducted by the photographer, wonderful photographer named Latoya Ruby Frazier, and he did. And a lot of workers feel this way, that the firing of the air traffic controllers was the real steep decline in unions' bargaining power. They should have responded, but it showed that there was open season on unions, and no one was going to stop that, really.
So fascinating stuff. Dan Kaufman of the New York Times, thank you so much for coming to see us.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.